After 60 million years in hibernation, the android legions of the Necrons are rising across the galaxy, relentless in their advance to restore their ancient empire. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to paint your Necrons from the Battle Ready Indomitus video up to a Parade Ready level, covering everything you need to know on how to do this. You'll also notice all the models have been based as well, and this is following the Indomitus basing guide, so check that out on how to base those models. Now we'll be starting with the iconic Necron warrior, but also follow this guide if you want to paint the Canoptek scarabs as well as the crypto thralls. So when you're ready, grab those brushes, shake those paints, and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is start off by painting the metallic areas of our Necron warrior. Our first colour is going to be Canoptek alloy. This is for the limbs and the rib cage. After that, we're going to move on to iron hand steel. So for the lighter silver details, so like the face, the shoulder blades, and details on his gauze blaster. Then we'll finish off by using Stormhost silver. This is to highlight both those areas. So first of all, let's start with that Canoptek alloy. So I'm just going to apply a little bit to the palette, a little bit more than that, a little touch of water, like so. Make sure I don't overload the brush too much. Let's get a nice point to it. Always just like to roll it around on the palette like so. And that really helps get a nice fine point. And then we're ready to start doing some layering. So what I'm going to do is round like the things like the limbs, like his legs, rib cage, whatever. Just start on the edges like so, and then just work my way down. You don't have to layer over everything, because you definitely want to show some of that previous colour showing through as well. If you've got like little bits of battle damage, just basically kind of like highlight around it a little bit. You don't have to go too mad. So just work your way around. Take your time. With those first metallic areas done, we're now going to move on to using iron hand steel. This is mainly just to tidy up some of those other areas we did previously. So things like the little joins and mechanical bits, obviously in his armour here. Also got his shoulder blades and his helmet to do as well. I'm going to treat these bits more like a highlight. So it'll be a chunky highlight, and that's getting prepped for the next colour, which will be Stormhost silver. There we are, with those lighter silver details now picked out. We're going to finish off by highlighting all the metallics using Stormhost silver. So I'll start with this darker area first. Just going to do a fine highlight just around like the armor panels or the limbs. And in some places you don't have to go all the way around. You can just pick some of the raised areas where the light will touch, like so. I'm just going to move on to the face as well. Just take your time. You don't have to do everything like I said. Just pick out the areas that are really obvious. There we are, with the metallics now done. We're going to move on to painting the black areas. Now for this, we're going to start with Dark Reaper as our first highlight. We're going to make it quite chunky. Then after that, we'll follow with Fenrisian Grey. So what I'm going to do is use my small layer brush. Just going to apply a little bit to the palette, not too much, a little touch of water, and then we're ready to start highlighting. But first of all, as always, just make sure we get a nice point to that brush. So then once that's done, we're then going to start doing the highlights. So it's the gauze flare we're mainly going to be concentrating on. So where you can, just start picking out some of those edges. Just using the edge of the brush here to get some nice consistent edges. Every now and again you might get a little bit of a bristle popping out like I did then. Just get rid of that, sorted. And here, like I said, it's a bit chunkier because then that'll give us a little bit of room to do a finer highlight as well. There we are, with that first highlight now down. We're going to move on to the next highlight, which is Fenrisian Grey. We just need to make sure this highlight's a little bit finer so you can see some of that Dark Reaper showing through. There we are, with the black areas now highlighted. We're going to move on to our final area on this model, and that's to highlight the green areas. Now for this, we're going to start with Warpstone Glow for the cable. After that, we'll use Moot Green, again to highlight that cable area. And we'll finish off with a little bit of White Scarf for both the cable and the other energy glows on the model. So first of all, let's get some of that green onto the palette, a little bit of water. And again, as always, super important, make sure we get a nice point to our brush. Once we've done all those things, we're then ready to start highlighting. So you've just got the cable down here. It varies from model to model. So what I'm going to do is just start up here on one end of the gun and then just start drawing it down so it's getting a little bit thinner each time. Then just do the same thing from this side. So broader, then just going down to a nice thin highlight. There we are, with that first highlight done. We're now going to use Moot Green and we're going to do a little bit more of a finer highlight just so you can see some of that Warpstone glow showing through. I'm going to do little dots as well so it feels like energy is flowing through. So a bit broad at the top like so, and then just start dotting it down like that. And finally we're going to use White Scar just to finish off. So what I'm going to do is just a couple of little dots on the cable like so, not too many. Just there like so as well. And then don't forget to do his eyes and these nice little glowy orbs here. Just make them punch out a bit more. There we are with the Necron Warrior now done. We're going to move on to our next model, which is the Scorpek Lord. Also use this guide for painting your Scorpek Destroyers as well as your Plasmacite. Now most of the methods and techniques follow the same as the Necron Warrior, just a slightly bigger model, so it makes sense to take you through it. Now the first area we're going to concentrate on is the metallic. So for this we'll be starting off with Canoptek Alloy as a layer and a highlight. Then we're going to move on to Iron Hand Steel, just to pick out some of those lighter steel areas, and then use Stormo Silver over all of those areas as a final highlight as well. But first of all, let's start with that Canoptek Alloy. So all I'm going to do is apply a little bit onto the palette like so, a little touch of water. Key thing here is just make sure you get a nice point by spinning it around. And then ready to start highlighting. So what I'm going to do is just start on the top there using the edge of the brush like so. Then I'm going to start moving on to the actual rib cage and start doing a layer. There we are with that layer on some of the armour panels done. We're now going to use Iron Hand Steel. This is more of a tidy, so things like his little loincloth there, you've got his little flensing claw, shoulder pads, face, and some of the metal details on the weapon. Just tidy back up with that. So what you're aiming to do is like layer in a little bit, but leaving some of that lovely recessed shade shown through as well. There we are with the tidy up of Iron Hand Steel done. What we're going to do now is start highlighting all the metallic areas using Stormhose Silver. So I'm just going to start on this little tabard here and just work my way across the whole model. So just take your time, and all you want to do is just keep it as a nice fine highlight. If you do make any mistakes, you can just tidy back up with those previous colours. There we are with all those silver highlights now done. What we're going to do now is move on to highlighting the black details. Now for this we're going to start with Dark Reaper and then move on to Fenrisian Grey. So first of all, let's start with the Dark Reaper. So what I'm going to do, get a couple of dollops on the palette, a little bit of water, not too much. And again, the key thing, as always, is get yourself a nice point on that brush. So just drag it through and spin. And for this, I am using a small layer brush as well, as always, for doing fine detail work. So once I'm happy with that, I'm then ready to start highlighting. So I'll start on the gun here, first of all. So all I'm going to do is just start moving my brush, using the edge of the brush like so, just to get a nice consistent line. But obviously, when you get into a bit further, into the actual weapon itself, you'll have to use the tip of the brush, so just take your time. If you find your highlights are a bit chunky or a bit wobbly, just use the Corvus Black from the base coats just to tidy back up again. There we are with the Dark Reaper applied. We're now going to move on to Fenrisian Grey, and the idea with this is just to do it a little bit finer than the previous highlight, just so you can see some of that Dark Reaper showing through. Take your time, and again, if you make any mistakes, just tidy back up with Dark Reaper or Corvus Black. There we are with the black areas now highlighted. We're going to move on to the green energy areas. Now for this we'll start with Warpstone Glow. This is going to be for the cables, so we're going to start highlighting those up. After that we'll use Mood Green again for the cables. Following that we'll be using Ogryn Camo. We're going to concentrate this as highlights on the blade. And then we'll finish off with White Scar for all the energy details, whether that's the cables, the blade, or the eyes and orbs. So first of all, let's start with the Warpstone Glow. So all I'm going to do is just apply a little bit to the palette. Again, a little touch of water. Make sure I've got it nicely loaded up, and then we're ready to start those cables. Most of them are around the back, so all we're going to do is start concentrating around the back here. And like we did on the Necron Warrior, I'm going to start on one side, a bit thicker in places, and then just slowly get a little bit thinner, almost down to a little bit of a line like so. And then once we're on this cable end here, a bit thicker at the top, and then just gradually moving it down to being a bit thinner, just to give the impression that it's like pulsating with energy. With the Warpstone Glow now done, we're going to move on to Moot Green, and we're just going to do this a little bit finer than the Warpstone Glow. And again, just starting thicker on one side and going a bit thinner, but still showing that previous colour through. One of the things you can do is like little dots as well, like I'm just doing here. That'll give that sense of energy flowing through these cables as well. There we are with the Moot Green now done. We're going to move on to using Ogryn Camo, and we're just going to concentrate this on the blade. So first of all, I'm just going to use the edge of the brush like so, and just start running it down like this. It's got a nice yellowy tone to it as well. So I'm just going to go all the way around any of the edges, the hard edges for sure. Again, as much as possible, just using the edge of this brush like that, and then just run. Some places you'll need to use the tip like round here. So just take your time. With the Ogryn Camo now done, we're going to move on to White Scar. We're going to do this over all the energy glows, so whether that's like the little orb just here, so we can just pick that out in the center like so. Just move that around so it's a bit more smoother. You've got the eyes to do. And obviously there's things like the cables, doing little dots on that. I'm just going to start running around the blade as well, just for a super fine highlight. I'm not going to do it all the way around. I'm just going to pick out some like the corners, just so it gives it a bit more of a sense that the light's picking it up. Like so. And then we'll just move around to the cables quickly to show you that. And then here, just like a couple of little dots, just to give that sense of like the energy flowing through as well. There we are with the Scorpet Lord now done. We're going to move on to the Overlord. Now the majority of this model has been completed using the Necron Warrior and the Scorpet Lord guide. So all we're going to do is just concentrate on the gold details and his hyperphase glaive. Also, as most of the colours are the same, use this guide for painting your Royal Warden. Now for the gold details, I'm going to start by using Retributor armour as a tidy and then do some highlights using Stormhost Silver. So first of all, let's start with that Retributor armour. So all I'm going to do is just apply a little bit to the palette as we always do. A little bit of water. Again, we don't want it too thick and goopy. Get a nice point. And then we're ready to start doing those tidying up areas. So what the sections we've got here obviously is little tabard bits that come down and then his crown as well. So just take your time. And what you're aiming to do is just get some of that nice goldness coming back up again and then still maintain a lot of that shade in the recesses. With those gold details now tidied up, we're going to start doing some edge highlighting using Stormhost Silver. So again, we're just trying to get like where the light would touch, fine little edges on the side of the this little tabard area. Again, you can see here, I'm not using the tip of the brush, I'm just using the side. And as always, that will give you a nice consistent line. Do that all the way around. Obviously, you've got the top of the crown to do as well. The little dots in the middle, you can probably just dot them if you really wanted to, which is what I'm going to do here. Not going to go too mad with that. There we are, with the Stormhost Silver highlights now done. What we're going to do now is move on to the Hyperphase Glaive. Though the colours and techniques are very similar to the Scorpet Lord, because it's a slight different shape and a bit smaller, it's worth taking you through anyway. So we'll be using Ogren Camo as the first highlight, and then we'll just finish off with a little bit of white scar just on the tips and stuff. So first of all, let's start with Ogren Camo. So again, just get a little bit to the palette, a little touch of water, and then get a nice point, and then we're ready. So we've got some curvy bits on here, so you can see you've got a bit more of a curved shape. So I'm just going to start there, and again, just using the edge of that brush, start moving all the way around, start picking those highlights out. There we are, with the Ogren Camo now applied. We're just going to finish off by using a little bit of white scar. I'm just going to keep this to like tips, not all the way down. Same for the bottom, because you just want to get the kind of impression that the light is hitting it. So don't do every single line. Just like little bits like so. And there we are with the Necron Overlord now done. We're going to move on to the Plasmancer. Now again, the majority of this model has been painted and highlighted following the previous methods and techniques in this guide. So we're just going to concentrate on this purpley metallic robe. Now for this, we're going to start with a tidy up of Iron Hand Steel, then we'll use a highlight of Stormhost Silver. So what I'm going to do is just grab a little bit of Iron Hand Steel, dot that on there, a little bit of water, maybe a little bit more than that. Because we're just going to do a tidy up stage, we don't need it to be too thick and goopy. So I'll get my brush to a nice point, and then we're ready to start getting that painted. So obviously there's some pooling here and there, so all I'm going to do is just like little dot, like circular bits here. Just going to tidy that back up with Iron Hand Steel, and then do a bit more of a chunky highlight just around the edges in preparation for the next stage. With that tidy stage now done with Iron Hand Steel, we're going to move on to Stormhost Silver. And again, just a fine highlight using the edge of the brush where you can, just to pick out those real fine highlights. You're just going to work all the way around the cloak. Mainly, I'm just going to be picking out the sides, probably do the odd little circular dot here, like that. Just keep working my way around. And all you're aiming to do is just make it look like the light's catching it a bit more. There we are, with the Plasmancer now done. We're going to move on to our Canoptech Reanimator. Now for this, we're going to start by doing some dry brushing on the actual armour panel, so all the metallic details, and then we'll move on to doing some cables at the very end, which are just different colours. So for the actual armour, we're going to be using Canoptech Alloy as our first dry brush, then we're going to go on to the lighter silver areas and use Iron Hand Steel, then finish off with a nice highlight of Stormhost Silver over both of those details. But first of all, let's start getting that Canoptech Alloy loaded up on our brush. So all I'm going to do is just get a little bit on the brush like so, don't need too much. And I'm just going to start wiping that off on the tissue. Now the key thing here when doing any dry brushing is to remove as much of that pigment from the bristles as you possibly can. So just keep moving it around, cross in little circle sections like that, and then just move to the side. That's about the right amount we want loaded on the brush. So once we've done that, we're then ready to start dry brushing. So what we're going to do is just start on one of the legs and work our way around. So all we're doing is looking to pick out those raised areas, so we're moving side to side, trying to avoid all the recesses and just picking out those nice raised parts for good definition. Again, keep going down, getting more paint, wiping it off, and then just start flicking back and forth like so. This is on the, obviously the lighter brass colour, not the silver areas. With the darker brass areas now done, we're going to move on to these lighter silver areas on the top of the carapace. And again, for this, I'm using iron hand steel, slowly building those highlights, moving side to side, up and down, so we can get all those contours. Always make sure you don't get any in the recesses. If you do find some of your dry brush goes in the recess, just use your shades to go back in there and add some more definition. There we are, the iron hand steel done on those shoulder pads. What we're going to do now is use Stormhost Silver, and this is over all the metallic areas, and let's just get ourselves a nice highlight. So, like any kind of dry brushing, you're probably not going to get huge definition on the first pass, so always go down, get some more paint on your brush, wipe it off, and carry on. It just takes time to build up those highlights. There we are, with all that armour now highlighted up by doing some dry brushing. You'll notice that most of the details have also been brought up to a parade ready level, apart from the cables around the legs, which is what we're going to start on right now. So we'll be both doing purple cables and sort of dark teal cables. For the purple ones, we'll be using Demonette Hide as a highlight over black, and then we'll follow that with Slanesh Grey. And then for the teal ones, we'll use Incubi Darkness as a highlight over black, then follow that with a little bit of Sotek Green. But first of all, let's start with that Demonette Hide. So I'm just going to apply a little bit again to the palette, a bit more than that. And just a little touch of water. Keep spinning it around, always get that little spin on just so you can get a nice point to your brush. Then we're ready to start doing them. So the purple ones are going to be the top of the cables all the way around the legs. So all I'm going to be doing, like I've done with the green cables in the previous techniques and methods we've been showing, is just do a couple of little lines, a bit broad at the top, and then just peter out to being a little bit finer. And just work that all the way around all those top cables. There we are, with the Demonette Hide now highlighted. We're going to move on to Slanesh Grey, and like we would with the Moot Green on the green cables, we're just doing little dots like so. So just take your time. If you do make any mistakes, you can always rebase coat with black and start again. There we are, with the purple cables now done. We're going to move on to the teal ones, and for this we're going to start with a highlight of Incubi Darkness. So again, following the same method, just working our way around each cable. There we are, with that base coat now dry, we're just going to start highlighting using Sotek Green. And again, like you would with the Slash Grey or Moot Green, just take your time and just do little dots, starting from one end to the next. And there we are, with the Canoptek Reanimator finished. Our parade ready painting guide for the Zaraken dynasty is now done. Now there are a couple of things to remember when painting this model. Firstly, when doing any edge highlights, try and take your time. If you can, use the edge of your brush where possible. If you need to use the point, just steady your hands on your table. Also, when doing dry brushing, just build up those highlights gradually. Don't expect a fine highlight on your first pass over. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed painting your own parade ready Necrons, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.